All right, so this is the part two. What does Wollstonecraft say about women's education? About matrimony. She talks about the women learning things like etiquette and how to find a husband and all these games they learn to play instead of being based on infatuation. That a relationship be based on friendship, because if a relationship isn't based on friendship, it will fall apart. What are some of the characteristics of Gothic literature? In literature, a term used to describe work with sinister or grotesque tone that seeks to evoke a sense of terror on the part of the reader or audience. Gothic literature originated as a genre in the 18th century with works such as Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto. To some extent, the notion of medieval itself then carried with it associations of the dark and the grotesque, but from the beginning an element of an intentional exaggeration, sometimes verging on self-parody, attached to itself to the genre. Key ideas: overdramatic, dark, deceptive, supernatural. Overdramatic, dark, deceptive, descriptive, and supernatural. In what way does Northanger Abbey function as a Gothic parody or as a courtship plot? The plot is similar to the Mysteries of Udolpho, with her journey in by carriage to Northanger Abbey with Henry Tilney. She forces this is what they've written. Austen forces her heroine Catherine to exhibit all the symptoms of a heroine in the Gothic novel, sensibilities all over the place, making her wild accusations parody implied death. I don't understand what they mean by that. The courtship plot for the entire story, in Abbey instead of a castle. The Gothic novels were set in castles, but the Abbey was reminiscent of Catholic England because there's a dark aspect, violent environment about the Abbey. In general, you should also be full. Okay, so these are the authors. So Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley was the son of Timothy Shelley, a member of the Parliament. He attended Oxford, but was expelled for publishing The Necessity of Atheism. He then eloped with Harriet Westbrook and traveled Europe with her. He abandoned her to be with Mary Shelley, daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft, and author of Frankenstein. In 1818, the two met up and lived near Lord Byron and Shelley, and Byron talked regularly about Shelley and Byron talked regularly about poetry. Well, what do you think about poetry, Byron? Well, I think that it's totally it's poetical, man. Really? Let's have some more laudanum. Shelley died in a boat accident during a storm at the age of 29 in 1822. Oh. Coleridge, 1772 to 1834. Samuel Taylor Coleridge is one of the most important figures of English Romanticism. Over the course of a few years, in his early mid-20s, he composed poems that continue to be regarded as essential to the English canon, among them The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Frost at Midnight, and the fragment Kubla Khan. He wrote a few poems that for the last 35 years of his he wrote few poems for the last 35 years of his life, as he was undermined by procrastination and addiction to opium. Nonetheless, Coleridge's story is, in the end, one of success. His poetry has remained fresh and affecting for generations of readers, and his later philosophical writing earned him a place as one of the most profound thinkers in the 19th century. Well, Byron, 1788 to 1824. George Gordon Lord Byron was born near Poverty, January 22nd, 1788. Wow. Lame in one leg, probably from some kind of cerebral palsy. His dad was Captain John Byron and was nicknamed Mad Jack. His mom was Scottish heiress named Catherine Gordon, and yes, Mad Jack married her for her money. Okay, this goes on to say he was pretty much sexually abused by his nursemaid for the first 10 years of his life and had to deal with his mom, who was prone to periods of rage and sounds pretty much like she was bipolar. Byron's great-uncle died childless and George got the title. He was then sent away to school. First to Dulwich and then Harrow in 1801. This is way too much information. In 1805, he attended Trinity College, made some lifelong friends, and incurred a ton of debt, which he only added throughout the rest of his life. Basically, he published his work, Hours of Idleness, in 1807, when he also received a degree from Cambridge. He got slammed by critics, and so 2 years later he published English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, in which he basically slammed back his critics and the bigger poets of his time. So he also inherited Newstead Abbey, where he partied hard and got pretty much And the story pretty much follows this trend: party hard, write some poems, incur some debt, until he left and found a new party spot. He was charming and handsome and sexually unconventional, so he used it and traveled the world. He found a cause in freedom fighters in various countries in 1824. He organized an expedition into Greece to help the Greeks fight the Turkish Empire. He was financing the training soldiers when he became exhausted and succumbed to fever, and his incompetent doctors pretty much bled him until he was too weak to fight a fever. He died at the age of 36. Wow. All right. Keats. Not that this mattered, but he was born on Halloween, 1795 to 1821. Moving on, he was a medical student at Guy's Hospital and a surgeon. He was inspired by Byron and Hunt and started poetry when he was 19. He suffered from depression, apparently said that at one point that if he ever became a poet, he would kill himself. Over time, he started devoting more time to writing than he did to medicine. He died of tuberculosis at a young age. Looks like he died very young, like 26 or something. Blake. He was a romantic poet, encouraged art with painting and printmaking. This explains why he uses art symbolism in his literary work. And, oh my gosh, they didn't really try very hard there, did they? Let's see if I can find Blake. Blake. William Blake. We've got to get a better... Blake. Oh, these are first lines. Blake. 39. This is at the very beginning. Let's get a little bit more... Somebody did something super half-assed there. Blake was born on November evening in 1757. Above his parents' hosiery shop in the Soho district of London, James and Catherine Blake, religious dissenters whose non-compromising beliefs were those of a growing number of people, allowed their son to pursue a program of self-study and saved him from being schooled under the institutional authorities authorities he instinctively abhorred. Although his parents were generally indulgent, there are hints that Blake balked even under their natural expressions of authority. He received a thrashing for declaring that he had seen the face of God and was accused of lying when he reported passing a tree bespangled with angels. Since his family could not afford the expense of artistic training, he was apprenticed at 14 to a highly respected engraver with whom he lived for 7 years while learning the trade, which would thereafter earn him his living. So he was really a mystic. And he wrote a lot of poetry, and that's as much as I can do for now. Wordsworth. Let's see where my time is here. Wordsworth. A central figure in the English Romantic movement, born in 1770. His mom died when he was 8, his father when he was 13, leaving them with enormous debt. 4 siblings, lyrical ballads, in conjunction with Coleridge, was largely his project. Lyrical ballads marks a decisive break with the formalism of neoclassicism of the 18th century. According to Wordsworth, poems are largely associated with emotion, establishing the idea of using nature to understand the sincerity of the emotion. Not entirely sure what that means. I have that in my thing I wrote. Poems respond to the French Revolution, war, and industrialization, using contradictions and tensions to give credibility to his own works. Lyrical ballads combated the overly artificial language on which poetry relied, chose situations from common life, and made them seem potentially supernatural. Part of the Lakers school and one of the big 6 British romantic poetry. And lyrical ballads forcing the reader to look at ordinary events and examine them in a different light. Focusing on the working class in rural settings, spontaneous overflow of emotion, disgraced that the first stimulation is being satisfied by Gothic novels. Okay, there's that.